In parshas teruma, the first sicha Aleph, the Rebbe writes like this. We're starting here. On page 112. V'al pi zeh nimtzo shetrumas ha'adanim, the teruma that was given for the footings of the boards, v'hatruma l'klolos hamishkan, two separate charities, hein bedugmas ha'aveda de krishma u'tfila v'ha'aveda de talmud Torah de chol hayom. The difference between the donations given for the adanim and the donations given in general for the Mishkan is similar to the distinction or the difference between davening and learning, which includes doing mitzvahs all day long. What is the distinction? Trumas ha'adanim hi bedugma lo aveda de krishma u'tfila. In what way is what are the adanim similar to krishma and davening? Noshe muktanim pturim imena. Women and children are not obligated to give that donation. It has to be people who are of the age to go to the army. Yet, those men who are mechuyev to give the adanim, he benusa chashava lekulam. In the davening, which only men are really obligated, those who are obligated say the same davening, the same brachas, the same order, the same nusach. Al derech trumas ha'adanim sheneschayvu bo rak hagdolim miben esrim shana o mailo. The same is true with donating to the adanim. It's only for men, but it's the same for all men, which is the machzis hashekel. On the other hand, the donation to the Mishkan in general, that's more like learning and doing mitzvahs. Shekol echad mechuyev bo, gam hanoshim v'hataf. When it comes to learning Talmud Torah, everybody is mechuyev, including children and women. But the amount of learning and the type of learning is very different for the different groups. So what do we have here? There is a mitzvah that applies to everybody, but it is performed differently by different people. There are mitzvahs that apply to only certain people, but they all do it the same way. So let's understand what that means. The difference between davening and learning is that davening is an internal process. It's a condition or a conditioning of the mind and heart. Whereas learning and doing mitzvahs is more objective, not as subjective. So one of the things we see here, when you find a mitzvah that doesn't apply to everybody, like tefillin, davening with a minyan, and of course the question is, why don't women daven with a minyan? Why don't women put on tefillin? So the tendency is to look at what's different about women. I think a better approach, and as we'll see here in this sicha, the question shouldn't be what is different about women. The question should be, what is it about this mitzvah that it applies only to men and not to women? Because the fundamental question is, every mitzvah in Torah is emes, every word in Torah is emes. Doesn't emes apply to everybody, everywhere, to the same degree in the same way? I mean, emes is emes. So if it's emes, it should be universal. In fact, there are mitzvahs that are universal. Not only to men, women, and children, but also to non-Jews. So these are true for everybody, it seems. And yet there are mitzvahs that are only true for some people. Why would that be? Doesn't that in some way imply that these mitzvahs are not so true? Because we're saying that truth and universality are the same. If it's true, it should be true everywhere. If it's not true everywhere, then maybe it's not so true. So here the Rebbe is saying like this. There are different functions for the different mitzvahs. It's not that it isn't true anywhere else. It doesn't apply anywhere else. I mean, it's like saying you give tzedakah to the poor. Well, why only to the poor? Right? That's where it applies. And it applies to all poor people. So it's true and universal in the sense that it is consistent, always true, that wherever there is a poor person, you give tzedakah. Why don't you give to rich people? It's not tzedakah. Giving money to a person who doesn't need it is not tzedakah. So it's not a chesed in the tzedakah. Tzedakah is a particular emes. So each mitzvah has its function. One of the distinctions, a very general distinction, is what is the effect on the person when he does the mitzvah? What is the effect of davening? Davening is a subjective mitzvah. You must feel, you must develop within yourself a love and a fear of Hashem. By definition, that's going to be limited. Like the Rebbe says in the sicha, if you're learning the chachma of Torah, which is the Eibishter's chachma, so your chachma is connecting to the Eibishter's chachma. If you're doing kindness, or you're feeling a love for the Eibishter, then you are connecting to the chesed, which is where love comes from, to the Eibishter's chesed in the higher worlds. So, if you're connecting to the Eibishter himself, not to any particular part, then you're tapping into the core, the essence of your neshama. It's like the Eibishter wants you to be his. That means very personal. I want you. That's called the Etzem HaNeshama. Etzem HaNeshama means the very fact that you're a Jew. That connects to the very fact that God is God. Etzem to Etzem. If you're connecting to a particular function within yourself, within your nefesh, like Ahava and Yira, then that will connect you to the particular svira of the Eibishter, the Eibishter's chesed, the Eibishter's gvura, up to the world of Atzilus. what the Rebbe tells us in the sicha is that these things are not isolated. Within every subjective mitzvah there's an objective truth, and within every objective emes, etzem, there's also a subjective application. So that's why in davening, who is mechuyev in krishma and tefillah? Who is mechuyev to develop a love and a fear of the Eibishter in their heart? Adults, men. How do they do it? All say the same krishma, the same brachas before the krishma, the same words, the same nekudas. So there's something universal about davening and krishma, and yet it's a very subjective thing. Why is that? Because within every subjective mitzvah, in the background, there is the etzem haneshama, the meid ani, that is universal. In learning, everybody's mechuyev in learning, men, women, and children. Women are mechuyev to learn the mitzvahs they need to know. Children, the Torah gives a chiyuv to the father to teach the child Torah. So Torah is addressed to the children, but it comes through the father. So it includes everybody. And yet, how much do you learn? Well, that depends. If you're a man, you have to learn every free minute. If you're a woman, you have to learn until you know what you need to know and how to do mitzvahs. And if you're a child, you need to be introduced to Torah. If you're a worker, depending on how much free time you have, that's how much chiyuv you have in the study of Torah. So, on the one hand, everyone has an obligation to learn Torah, and on the other hand, it's not the same for everybody. So in a sense, you can say that there are actually two levels of truth, the objective level and the subjective level. In each case, on that level, it is consistent and true. So when you see a mitzvah that applies only to certain people, the question is not what's wrong with the other people. Only kohanim duchen. What's wrong with Leviim? Why can't they duchen? So you're going to go looking. Oh, the Leviim, they sing too much. they play instruments. They're a little distracted. Don't look at the Levi, look at the duchening. What is it about the duchening that it applies to the kohen and not to the Levi, not to the Yisrael?